How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Ches, Daf 18 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, we're starting the second parak of Masechta Sanhedrin. Parak Kohen Gadol. Very interesting parak. Lots of Agadata. Although I don't think we're going to get to Agadata. Yeah, we're not really going to get to Agadata today, but tomorrow we will. Tomorrow we will, and then there's basically just there's a few daf in a row of Agadata, so that's going to be cool. It's not a very large parak, but it's interesting in my opinion. Let's do it. All right, says the Mishnah, Kohen Gadol don v'donin oso. So a Kohen Gadol can judge, he can be a judge, and he also can be judged. He could be a, defendant. Choletz v'chotzen leishto. If his brother dies without children, so he could do chalitza with his sister-in-law. Alternatively, if he dies without children, so one of his brothers can do chalitza with his widow. Umiyabmin es ishto, one of his brothers can also do yibum with his widow. That's an option as well. Aval hu einu miyabim, but he cannot do yibum. If his brother dies without children, he cannot do yibum with his brother's widow, mipnei shu asav almana, because he's not allowed to marry a widow. Oh, by the way, it's the morning, so I have shtickle coffee over here. Mace lo mace. Now, if the Kohen Gadol, a relative, dies, now of course, Kohanim in general are not able to become Tmei mace, right? They're not Metame lemace in general, but for their immediate relatives, they can be their father, mother, etc., brother, sister. Kohen Gadol, however, nobody, no exceptions. So, mace lo mace, if somebody dies, enu yotzei achar mita, he doesn't follow the coffin, to the cemetery, to the Beis HaKvaros. Elahei nichnasin v'hu nigla. But what he can do, though, so he can't kind of be part of the procession. But hey nichsim v'hu nigla, kilu, as soon as they leave a street or an alley, he could then show up in that alley. Hey niglin, when they show up in an alley or a street or whatever, he must hide himself. So he can't, he's got to kind of jumps around and can kind of follow the procession in that manner, but not with the procession. Ad Pesach Shaira Ir Divrei Meir, and he can do this until they get to the gates of the city. Then he must remain. He cannot go out of the gates of the city with the funeral procession. That is the opinion of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, Enu yotzei min hamikdash. Rabbi Yehuda says, Pashit, that he must remain in the holy temple. He can't leave the Beis HaMikdash to follow the procession. Mishum shenemar, because the pasuk says, Umin hamikdash lo yetzei, Pashit. Right? The pasuk says he may not leave the temple. So he stays there. L'chaim. And when he comforts others, somebody passes away, so the Kohen Gadol is comforting them. Okay, so this is talking about in the Beis HaKvaros, in the cemetery, after the burial. So nowadays, I think the minig is that the mourners walk among the consolers and the Menachem. We're going to talk about that a bit in the Gemara, I think tomorrow. But anyways, what the Mishnah is saying, however, is that the mourners, the Avelim, stand in one place, and that what you'll have is all of the Menachem, all the people who attended the funeral as consolers. I don't know if that's the right word, but people who went to the funeral, so they would walk in a straight line past the mourners. Now, when the Kohen Gadol was in attendance, so you would have that straight line of people walking past the mourners. Now, on the kind of to their right, so you have the mourners. Okay, let's say all the way on the left, you have the Avelim. And then you have the row of the people to the right of the Avelim. Then to the right of that row would be the Kohen Gadol, and then to his right would be his deputy. The Memuna, which we're going to see, I think tomorrow, is also interchangeable with the Skan. Okay. So you have a whole line of people to the right of the mourners that are walking past the mourners. And then you have a sandwich with the line of the mourners and the deputy serving as the pieces of bread, and the Kohen Gadol in the middle serving as the tuna fish. Okay. Tuna fish? Maybe like the Kohen Gadol is the falafel balls and the salad and the hummus and the trina. Alright. Fine. And when he is being comforted by others, if somebody passed away in the Kohen Gadol's family and he's being comforted, so all the people say to the Kohen Gadol, Anu kaparoscha, wow, we are in atonement for you. Says Rashi, Anu kaparoscha, banu tiskaper ato. Via us you shall have atonement. Va'anachnu tachtecha l'cholaroi lavo alecha. We are in place of you for anything, any negative thing that should happen to you should happen to us instead. Wow. He says to them, you shall be blessed from the heavens. Wow. And so when somebody passes away and the Kohen Gadol is in mourning, so the Suda Savra is the first Suda immediately after the Kvura, and other people provide that Suda for the Avelim. So when we're at the Suda Savra, so all the people are sitting on the floor, and he is sitting on a bench. Moving on now to the halachas of a king. Hamelech, a king, lo don v'lo donin also. He does not judge, and he is not judged. Lo meid v'lo meidin also. He does not testify, nor is he testified against. Lo choletz v'lo chotzin leishto. If his brother dies without children, he does not do chalitza with his sister-in-law. If he dies without children, we do not do, right, his brother will not do chalitza with his widow. Lo miyabim v'lo miyabim leishto. And if his brother dies without children, the king does not do yibum, and if the king dies without children, his brother would not do yibum with his widow. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda says, look, if the king wants to do chalitza with his sister-in-law, or to do yibum with her, givaldig. Amrulo, the Chacham said to Rabbi Yehuda, Ein shomen, no, we do not listen. He may not do Yibum or Chalitza. The Gemara is going to talk about this. I think talk on today's daf. No, tomorrow's daf. Okay. Where am I? Alright. Where am I? Okay. Where am I? Zacholatov. Okay. Amrulo, Ein Shomelo. Ve'ein nosin. Okay. Ve'ein nosin amanoso. And we do not marry his almana, which is interesting. So if you have a king, and the king dies, his wife, nobody, she's like off limits because of it. You can't marry his wife, his widow. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda nose amelech almanoso shomelech. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that a king can marry the widow of another king. So if a king dies and he has a widow, so regular people cannot marry her. But if there's another king, that king can marry her. She could remarry to royalty. Because we see with King David, that he married the widow of Shaul. Shenemar, as the Apostle says, is based adonecha. Hashem says to David, I believe, and I will give to you the house of your master Shaul, and the wives of your master in your bosom. The Gemara is going to talk about that, I believe, also tomorrow. Azoy. Okie dokie. That was the Mishnah. Givaldi. L'chaim. Zog the Gemara. Kohen Gadol don pshita. Okay, so the Mishnah has said that Kohen Gadol can judge. Obviously, why not? Don and osa is trichale. Sure, enechinami, but the chiddush is don and osa, that we judge him. Honami pshita. This is ochit obvious, because if he can judge, obviously he can be judged. In order for somebody to be able to judge, he has to be able He can't be beyond. He can't be untouchable. He can't be beyond judgment himself. If they can't take him to court, then how can he be the judge? I think it's translated as like remove straw from your head and then remove straw from other people's heads. First make sure that you're 100% before making sure that other people are 100%. Right? You can't have a scenario where you have somebody judging other people and telling, yeah, you got this problem and that problem, while he is immune to criticism. No. First make sure you're 100% before you're telling other people that they need to be 100%, i.e., in order for you to be in a position to criticize others, we have to be able to criticize that person. That person has to be open to criticism as well and susceptible to critique as well. And therefore, if we're saying that a Kohen Gadol could judge, so then memele, it must be that they could judge him as well, because that's just kind of two sides of the same coin. And also, rather, since when the Mishnah moves on to the halachas of a king, we say a king does not judge, and a king is not judged, so therefore we had sort of the same template, the same description of the halachas of a Kohen Gadol, which is that he can judge and he can be judged. Tananami Kohen Gadol don v'donin. Fine. V'ibai sema. Or alternatively, Hakamashmalon Kidetanya, the Chiddush of Kohen Gadol Dam V'Danan also is like we learn in the following brayso. Kohen Gadol Shaharag Es HaNefesh, that if a Kohen Gadol kills somebody, b'mezid, if it's intentional nera. Okay, if a Kohen Gadol intentionally kills somebody, well then he's a murderer and he's chayiv misa. B'shoigeg, what if he accidentally kills somebody? I think these halachas of Ir Miklat, I think it's going to be Masechta Makis, I think, which is the next Masechta we're going to learn in a few months. Gola. So if he kills somebody by accident, he runs away to the Ir Miklat. And he violates mitzvah sese, mitzvah sosaise. The Gemara is going to explain what this means. Why is he violating mitzvah sese? Okay. And he's like a hedjit for all of his matters. Okay, let's go weiter. We're now going to basically flesh out this brisa, and ultimately, at the end, we're going to see how it explains our Mishnah. Now, okay, now, when the brisa says that if a Kohen Gadol kills somebody intentionally, we kill him, that's obvious. Of course. Well, the Chiddush is that if he kills somebody by accident, he goes to the Ir Miklat. We had to teach that. But that's also obvious. I mean, if somebody kills somebody else by accident, he goes to near miklat. I don't understand what's the chiddush. I don't care. He's the Kohen Gadol. Well, it's not so pashit, and the Gemara is going to explain why it's not so pashit. Because I may have thought to say, since it says by an Ir Miklat that if somebody, if Shimon kills Ruvain by accident, so he runs to the Ir Miklat, and then what's the halacha? The pasuk says v'yoshav ba, and Shimon, who killed Ruvain by accident, goes to the Ir Miklat and he remains there. Ad mos HaKohen HaGadol, until the high priest dies. When the high priest dies, then anybody who had killed somebody else by accident can now leave the Ir Miklat. But what happens when the Kohen Gadol is the one who killed by accident? He's the Kohen Gadol. Who is he waiting for? So I might say, called the Islay Takanta B'Chazara Ligle. I might think that you only go to an Ir Miklat, right? The kilu baked into this sort of whole experience of the Ir Miklat is that, and you go to the Ir Miklat and you stay there until the Kohen Gadol dies, and then you go home. But the Kohen Gadol, it's kind of Facebook meta kind of thing. What if it's the Kohen Gadol himself who died, who killed somebody by accident? So then he doesn't he's basically waiting for himself to die. Like the cheshbon kind of doesn't really work. He's the guy that they're waiting for to die. So maybe since that whole thing doesn't work out and he's basically just stuck there, so then maybe you're missing a crucial piece of the whole Ir Miklat experience, which is waiting for the Kohen Gadol to die, which can't be if he is the Kohen Gadol himself. So therefore maybe the whole sort of Ir Miklat experience unravels for a Kohen Gadol and doesn't exist for a Kohen Gadol. And so meaning a scenario such as this, where there is no option of going back home when the Kohen Gadol dies, because he is the Kohen Gadol, so maybe then Ir Miklat doesn't apply to him. The Tananis we learn in the Mishnah, Hahari Kohen Gadol, that if somebody kills a Kohen Gadol, in which case, also shtickle Facebook meta, right? You killed the guy who, when he dies, you go free. Or Kohen Gadol Sharag Esa Nefesh, or if you have a Kohen Gadol who killed, in which case he's basically waiting for himself to die. Eino Yotze Misham La'olam, he never leaves the Yer Miklat. So I might think that since sort of this crucial, or we think it's a crucial, right, since this component of Yer Miklat is missing, the component of then when the Kohen Gadol dies, you can go home, since that component is missing, Ema Lo Ligle, I might think that, okay, so you don't go to the Yer Miklat in such a scenario. Kamaj Malon, so we're teaching that he does go to the Yer Miklat. Wait, maybe I'll say Taka doesn't go to the Yer Miklat. Amar Kol, the Pasuk says, Lo Nushama Kol Rotzeach Afilu Kohen Gadol b'mashma. It says that any Rotzeach goes there, even a Kohen Gadol. If you kill by accident, you go to the Yer Miklat. Okay, so that's why we have to teach that a Kohen Gadol who kills b'shoigeg goes to an Yer Miklat. Okay, Chaim. Now, the Mishnah, the price was got a little funny. It's like, and he violates mitzvahs esi and a mitzvahs leisaise. Leisagi de lo over. I don't understand what we're saying. Okay, now violate mitzvah. I don't like. What are we saying? Overall mitzvah esi. He violates it. Why is he violating? What's he doing? Why is he doing it? Are we telling him to violate mitzvah? Like, what are we doing over here? This is what the Bryce is saying. If a Kohen Gadol violates mitzvahs esi or mitzvahs lisaise, harehu kehedjit l'chol devar. We treat him just like a regular person who violated a mitzvahs esi or mitzvahs lisaise. Pshita, this is obvious. Why should he get special treatment? Well, sakadate chamina, I might have thought to say, hoyol v'tnan, since the Mishnah says, ein donin loyas ashevet v'los novi asheker, this was the Mishnah da Beis, the first Mishnah of the Masechta, that we judge a tribe or a false prophet, v'los Kohen Gadol, or a Kohen Gadol, al pi bezdin shel shivim ve'echad. A tribe or a false prophet or a Kohen Gadol is judged by a bezdin of 71, which is unique. Says all the big things they will bring to you, to Moshe Rabbeinu, who represents the Sanhedrin, Devar of Shel Gadol, things pertaining to a VIP. I might think all things relating to VIPs, even just simply violating mitzvahs esse or mitzvahs loisaise, nothing to do with capital punishment. Everything simply goes to the Sanhedrin Gedolah. Kamaj Malon. So we're saying no. No. When it comes to stam mitzvahs esse, mitzvahs loisaise, where we're not talking about the chiv misas bezdin, so then in that case, bezdin of 3 would suffice. Maybe Al-Taka say that no, even for regular things, he would go to a bezdin of 71. Miksev divrei gadol hadavar hagadol ksev davar gadol mamish. It doesn't say all divrei gadol, all matters pertaining to VIPs. It doesn't say it. Hadavar hagadol, the big thing, capital cases. Davar gadol mamish, a big serious offense like a capital case. But the regular things, you would go just to go to the regular court. Now, how does that tie in to what we were saying before? Why does it say done v'done and also? The chiddush is that done v'done and also kilo will just treat him like a regular person, right? As long as it's not a capital case, we just treat him like a regular court case with a bezdin of 3. Me'idin also. So me'id u'me'idin also. So a Kohen Gadol can testify, and he can be testified against. Me'id. Why does he testify? V'atani, after all, we learn in the Brisa v'salamta. When it comes to Hashavas Aveda, for example, there are scenarios where a person is patur from returning a lost object. He's patur from Hashavas Aveda. V'salamta. Pa'im shata misalim. There are times when you can sort of excuse yourself from performing the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. V'pa'im shiata misalim. There are times when you can't excuse yourself. You have to do Hashavas Aveda. Okay, it's that how so? Well, kohen v'beisak faris. For example, if the lost object is in a cemetery and the finder is a kohen, so a kohen can't go into a cemetery. So okay, just move on. Don't worry about Hashavas Aveda. For example, and this is the important one for us, zoken v'lefi chvodo. If he's an elder person and picking up this lost object, it's not mechubad for him to have to, I don't know, who knows what got lost over there. Maybe a ball that the kids are playing with or something. You know, and now he's this older fellow. He's got to return it. No, if it's beneath his dignity, so then don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Shavas Aveda. Or kilu. You know, if he works as a consultant and he charges a fortune of money per hour, and it's just simply not worth his time to invest his time returning a lost object, and versus sort of doing his work. Okay, so don't worry about Ashavas Aveda. So what do we see? So therefore it says V'salamta, that you may hide, i.e. because built into Ashavas Aveda is the acknowledgement that there are going to be scenarios where you're potter. One of them being, if it's beneath your dignity, your kavod. So the thing is, Kohen Gadol, I mean, he is the most honorable person, right? We gotta put him on the highest levels of honor. Therefore, he should be able to excuse himself from testifying, because, well, you know, he's gonna come, show up and go to Bezdin and Drishas and Chakiris, and he's got to go on the witness stand, and for Tom, Dick, or Harry, it's not mechubad. So why are we saying Meid that he testifies? I would think that a Kohen Gadol kilu, don't bring him into like sort of petty cases. Let him focus on representing Am Yisrael l'fnei Avinu Shabashamayim. Anyways, where are we? Amr of Yosef says of Yosef, Meid la Melech. Oh, when we say that he testifies for a king. But v'atnan lo don v'lo don also. But we said in our Mishnah that by a king is not judged. So how is the Kohen Gadol ever going to testify for a king if kings are never going to be in court? Lo meid v'lo meidin also, right? A king doesn't testify, nor is he testified against. So I don't understand how a Kohen Gadol would ever be testifying against a king. Elo Amr Abzer rather says Abzer meid leven melech. Well, the Kohen Gadol could testify for the king's son, but ben melech edjitu. But the king's son is not anything special. So why would the Kohen Gadol get involved in the case of the king's son? The king's son is not a king. Elameid bifnei hamelech. No, what it means is that if the king's son does something naughty, so then the Kohen Gadol could testify, but the king would be there in the court. And like that, it's mechubad for the Kohen Gadol because the king is also there. But I thought the Sanhedrin, the king is never part of the Sanhedrin. So why would the king be part of the Sanhedrin? The Kohen Gadol, what happens is because out of the honor of the Kohen Gadol, also v'yosiv, so the king comes and he sits there so that the king will be present when the Kohen Gadol is giving testimony for the king's son. And then they receive the testimony of the king, of the Kohen Gadol in the presence of the king. And then the king goes home. What's the Dalet? I assume that it means that probably both the Kohen Gadol and the king, but the point is that maybe the focus is on the king, because the question is like, what's the king doing as part of the Sanhedrin? The point is he's only there temporarily. He's there only to show respect for the Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol gives his testimony. Once Kohen Gadol gives his testimony with the king there, so everything's mechubad, then the king can go home. And then the Bezdin continues on with the deliberations. So everything is nice and mechubad. Fine. L'chaim. Gufa, we said in Moshiv Melech b'Sanhedrin that a king is not part of the Sanhedrin. V'lo melech v'lo melech v'kohen gadol v'lo melech v'kohen gadol b'Ibashana. And similarly, or additionally, a king nor a Kohen Gadol participate in leaping a year. Melech b'Sanhedrin dichsev loisana al riv. The reason why a king is not part of the Sanhedrin is because the pasuk says losana al riv, losana al rav. That it says the pasuk says losana al riv, don't answer on a fight, I guess. But riv is spelled without a yud, so it's rav. Kilu, you can't. Right, if somebody greater, don't respond to somebody greater than you. So meaning, therefore, the concern is that if the king says something, nobody will be able to disagree with him. Therefore, simply the king will not be part of the Sanhedrin, and that way we avoid that scenario where people are, unable to respond and to say what they think. because it would contradict or be in disagreement with that which the king says, which would be a problem because the San al-Riv. So therefore we say the king does not participate in the Sanhedrin. That way people can share their opinions. Lo melech v'kohen gadol b'ibur shana, and we do not, and a king and a kohen gadol do not participate in the deliberations about whether or not to leap the year. Melech mishum afsanya. The reason why the king cannot be part of the deliberations is because of the payments to his soldiers. He pays his soldiers annually. They get an annual salary. So it is in the interest of the king to leap the year because he gets more. He can squeeze more service for the same amount, for the same salary. Right? If the yearly salary is, whatever it is, I don't know, $1,000 for the year to be in the king's army, and you can add an extra month to the year for the same salary, so he's going to want to do that. So he has an interest. Kohen Gadol Mishum Tzina. The Kohen Gadol also has an interest, which is, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is at the end of the summer, right at the beginning of the fall, or right around the fall. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol needs to go to the mikveh. Was it 5 times? I think he goes to the mikveh. 5 times. He has to change his clothes 10 times. Did I? What does Rashi say? He has to go to the mikveh 10 times, and he does kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. He goes to the mikveh 5 times, does kiddush yadayim v'raglayim 10 times, right? And therefore there's a lot of water. He's not wearing shoes. It's a stone floor. If you leap the year and add a month to the year, and you're pushing off Yom Kippur by a month, you could start getting cold. And he doesn't want to be cold. So his interest is to unleap the year, is to prevent the leap year. So because the king has an interest, which is to extend, to get more bang for his buck, the Kohen Gadol has an interest, which is to not leap the year so that he's not cold. So therefore, because the Kohen Gadol and the king each have kind of their own interest why they would or would not want to leap the year, we just kind of exclude them from the deliberations to avoid any kind of interest. Now the Gemara says, this next piece of Gemara is kind of, I don't know if I would say esoteric, but it's a little bit, it's a little bit loose for me, I'd say. But anyways, Amar Papa says, that basically the year goes based on the months, meaning we had just said that if they would leap the year, right, the Kohen Gadol is concerned that if they leap the year, what will happen is you're going to have Cheshvan weather in Tishrei, right? Because Yom Kippur is the 10th of Tishrei. And if you leap the year and add a month, and add an extra Adar, and you're basically pushing off Yom Kippur by a month, you're going to have Cheshvan weather in Tishrei. Basically, it's going to be colder. The cold that would normally be associated with Cheshvan is going to be now in Tishrei, and he's going to be cold. So we see that there could be a scenario where in the year you basically kind of like the months are off, ki'ilu. You have Tishrei, but really it's Cheshvan weather in Tishrei. Right? That's what we're saying, right? The Kohen Gadol is concerned that if it's a leap year, you're going to have Cheshvan weather in Tishrei, which means that there's a real possibility that you can have a scenario where it's Tishrei, but you have the weather of Cheshvan. Okay. But is this really the case? There were 3 cattle herdsmen that they were existing. Vishaminu Rabbanon, and the rabbis heard the Ka'amre that these cattle herdsmen were saying. Chada Amar, one of them said, Im Bachir v'Lakish Kechada Yenots, if the early grains and the late grains are ripening at the same time, Dain, who other than you know that it must be other. V'im lavleis Dain other. And if that's not the case, then it is not other. The other one said, Im torbet zwei betlag yamus, if an ox in the morning will die because it's so flippin' cold, uvetira, and yet in the afternoon, betoteena yadmuch yishlach moshche, and in the afternoon it warms up to such an extent that that same ox that was about to freeze to death earlier is now getting shade under a fig tree and scratching itself on the fig tree because it's warm, Dain hu other. That is an indication that it's other, when there's this kind of extreme fluctuation between cold in the morning and warm in the afternoon. But if that's not happening, then it's not other. V'chad amar, and finally the third one said, Im kidum tokif lachda yehei yipach bloyach nofik l'kable denu other. If there's like a strong, I think, eastern wind, and yet you can like blow breath from your mouth, and like your breath will kind of be able to like temper the wind or something. Denu other, then it's other. V'im lav leis den other, and if not, then it's not other. And the rabbis made it a leap year. So I think what this means is that basically what these herdsmen are saying is all these indications of like how you can know if it's other or not. So now what we had said earlier with the Kohen Gadol is you can have a scenario where it's Tishrei, but it's actually the weather of Cheshvan in Tishrei. However, what these herdsmen are saying are that fakert, meaning if it's the weather of Cheshvan, then you know that it's Cheshvan, right? Right, meaning what they're saying is that the sort of these symptoms are always representative of others. So meaning like, if it's really cold in the morning and then warm in the afternoon, you know that it's other. But if what we said earlier was correct, that actually if sometimes when you have like leap years, then actually things get moved around, then in Tishrei actually you can really have things that are representative of Cheshvan, but they're happening in Tishrei because of the leap year. And yet these herdsmen are saying, no, whenever these symptoms happen, you know it's other. What about the possibility that maybe it was a leap year and things got moved around? So this implies that no, every month always has the appropriate sort of symptoms, the appropriate weather patterns and things. You don't have another month's weather in a different month, right? But the Gemara asked, one second, what, you think that the rabbis are just deciding whether to leap years based on what they overhear from herdsmen? Oh, rather, look, the Rabbanan anyways were leaping the year because of their own cheshboinus. For a boker istayu because mistaya de istaya milsayu. Just simply the herdsmen sort of were saying these things that kind of, I guess, supported their decision to, right, were in line with their decision to leap the year, but they leaped the year for their own reasons. Ultimately, friends, that was the Yud Ches of Masechta Sanhedrin. We started the second parak of Masechta Sanhedrin. We talked about kings and Kohen Gadols and interesting halachis, ishtikul ir miklat. And then tomorrow we are going to continue exploring this topic. Peace out.